Okay guys, welcome back. This is the Debt Management Basics series, and this is 4.6, negotiating with creditors and debt collectors, the most effective ways to do so. So let me just get into some of the takeaways that I want you guys to get from this. I want you guys to understand what debt harassment is and how to handle it. I want you guys to know what you need in order to negotiate with a creditor or a debt collector. And I want you guys to also be comfortable and more effective when you guys negotiate with them. But before we begin, disclaimer. The financial information contained in this video is for informational purposes only and not for the purpose of providing specific financial advice. You should contact a financial advisor to obtain specific financial advice. So this is the course outline. Once again, this is 4.6 and we're almost done. So there's just going to be 3 more tutorials after this, and then you guys will have completed the basic series. So to start this one off, I want to talk to you guys about negotiations in general. Now, when it comes to the term negotiate, it's thought to be a bad word. It's actually a good word, but perception is going to be key. So this is a framework that you guys can use. This one is actually made to be a little more universal. So you don't have to just use this in debt management. You guys can actually use this in your career. So if you want to negotiate a higher salary, this is pretty much the framework that you can use. Now, I've tailored it to debt management, so you can't use it exactly. But this is what we're going to be talking about. So when it comes to negotiation, one thing that you need is negotiating power. Now, negotiating power is another word for leverage. So what you need to do is you need to understand negotiations in general and whatever it is that you're negotiating. So you're going to need knowledge that you can use in negotiations. You're going to have to build confidence, seek wise advice and wise counsel, manage funds. Once you guys have all that set, then you guys are going to devise a plan, your plan of attack, your strategy. You're going to execute that strategy, and then you're going to monitor the results or observe the progress. So I want to talk to you guys about 3 specific deal outcomes. Now, when it comes to financial outcomes, they're not limited to these 3, but they're just the 3 that I wanted to talk about. So we have lose-lose scenarios, win-lose, and win-win. So a lose-lose scenario is something that the results are detrimental to every party that was involved. The win-lose is when one party benefits at the other's expense. And a win-win is when all parties benefit. And this is actually an ideal scenario. And this is what I'm going to be saying that you guys should strive for when you guys are doing negotiations in general. So now let's get into the perceptions of each. So when it comes to the perception, a lose-lose scenario is thought as the other party, quote unquote, won. Now remember, fundamentally, if it was a lose-lose scenario, it was to their detriment as well. But typically what happens is people think that a lose-lose scenario is just a win-lose scenario where they were on the losing side. Now, the next one is going to be a win-lose scenario. When it comes to win-lose scenarios, it's thought to be the only thing that's possible, and it's what you must do if you want to become successful, which is not necessarily true, because the only way that it would work is if you found people who either don't care or are okay with a result that's at their expense. That's not always very sustainable. So the next one, well, the last one here is going to be the win-win scenario. So this is where everyone benefits, and this is thought to be impossible. So if you guys think about it, the lose-lose is thought to be a win-lose where they were on the losing side. A win-lose is thought to be the only thing that you should be going for, and it should be impossible to do a win-win. But I'm telling you to do a win-win. As you can imagine, this in general is going to be a major problem. The only one that I'm telling you guys to go for is thought to be impossible. And the main issue is it's the only one that's sustainable. If you do lose-lose scenarios, then it's not going to work. And win-lose scenarios, you always have to find new ones. It's not really good with building relationships. That's not good. So how do we do this where you don't have a victim in any transaction that we do? This is a simple framework on how you guys get win-win scenarios and how to avoid the others. Now, this is a simple one. I believe it should work in pretty much all cases, but don't quote me on that. Definitely try it out, see where it breaks down, and definitely let me know in the comment section where this actually does break down. So we have the first activity that you should be doing, 1-4, is going to be is understanding the needs and or wants of the other party. So you have to understand what they're looking to get out of the transaction. The next thing you need to do is strive to fulfill these, just not at your own expense. So once again, this is to stop you from being on the lose side. The next one is you need to understand or clearly identify your needs and or wants. And then the last part is going to be making sure that the other parties in the transaction can fulfill these, just not at their own expense. So that one's a lot more intangible, but as you guys can see, it's a matter of making sure that they're not on the lose side. And that's, in essence, how you avoid all the others and get win-win scenarios. So I know this could actually be kind of daunting, especially when I said negotiating with Godzilla and the devil. And this is actually the title of a Great Courses lecture. And it's part of the Great Courses Art of Negotiating the Best Deal, i.e. win-wins. Okay, so this one is actually a great course. Definitely recommend you guys do it. I'm probably going to link into the description below. And essentially what this is about dealing with two things. Dealing with someone who seems to have immense negotiating power, i.e. Godzilla, and someone who seems otherwise deceitful, incredibly clever, and not having the negotiating power to get into a transaction or effectively get out of one. So in order to do this, you have to increase your negotiating power, and in order to do that, there's going to be a couple things that I'm going to cover to show you exactly how. So let's go into part 2. So this one is going to be find the knowledge. So this one is going to be learning your true negotiating power. So let's talk about consumer rights. So this is your rights as a consumer of credit. So the first one I want to talk to you guys about is called a statute of limitations. So a statute of limitations, I actually went over it in 4.5. If you guys haven't seen it, definitely go back and then watch that particular tutorial. But essentially, all it really is a law that sets a time frame to start legal actions. And that's in general. The legal actions when it comes to debt collections is the actual collection of the debt. So now remembering the time frame in the event or the action that we're talking about is the collection of a debt. Typically, if you guys live in the States, each state has a different statute of limitations. Not so much different from them, but it depends on population. And typically, if you live in a state with a large population like New York, then the statute of limitations tends to be about 6 years. So it's 6 years for New York. And if you live in a state like Mississippi, the statute of limitation is 3 years for a debt. So now that you know the legal time that a creditor or a debt collector has to accomplish it, to collect on the debt, let's talk about how they collect on the debt. And that's going to be the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act. Now, essentially what this does is it limits and prohibits the behavior and actions of a third-party debt collector. in the attempt to collect on a debt on behalf of another person or an entity. So got to give it up to the guys over at Investopedia with this really good definition of what the act is. So now, when it comes to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, this one is regulated by the FTC, Federal Trade Commission. My apologies, and this one is literally to stop really unscrupulous practices with collecting on the debt. So here's just a couple of the different provisions to this particular law. I'm probably going to link that to the description below, and definitely go back to 4.5 if you guys want better details on it. But one of the things that I want you guys to take away from this is that you can see proof of owing money. So if a debt collector calls you and says that you owe a certain amount, you're within your rights to ask them to prove it. And remember that. You always want them to prove that you owe a debt. And here's just a couple more provisions. You guys can go back to 4.5 if you guys want to hear me cover this one. The one that I want you guys to take away is it grants you the right to sue. So what you guys have to understand is if they violate your rights under the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, you can sue the debt collector. And there's also provision where you can actually sue the original creditor, because the original creditor is the one who sent the debt collector towards you. So they will be held accountable. You can definitely reach out to an attorney to learn more information about that. If you guys were a victim of that, definitely reach out to a lawyer for it. The next one I want to talk to you guys about is about how your credit information is displayed. So this is going to be about your credit report. So this is the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and this regulates your access to your credit and the collection of information about your credit. So there's going to be a lot of provisions. Once again, I put this on 4.5, so definitely go back. The main thing that I want you guys to take from this is not only on the federal level are there laws about reporting information on your credit, but on the state level there are also laws that incorporate it. Like if you guys live in New York, one of the laws in New York is if the action that's going to be taking is collection of a debt, they have a debt collector or a creditor has to say a certain phrase to you. I'm not really going to get into that here. I believe I did get into that in 4.5, so definitely go back and then check that one out. So let's talk about a debt collector's needs. So this is what's going to instill negotiating power on behalf of the debt collector. So when it comes to a debt collector, there's a couple things that they do, but what they really need are two things from you. The first thing they need from you is to identify yourself. So this is going to be your full legal name. So if you're like me, where people just normally call you by a nickname, they can't use your nickname in trying to collect on a debt. They have to put your full legal name. So for someone like me, that lets me know immediately of what kind of phone call I'm getting if I were to get a debt collector. Now the next one is they have to get you to admit that you owe a debt. So if they don't get you to both identify yourself by your full legal name and not your full legal name, your full first name and last name, but you guys know what I mean, and then have you guys admit that you owe that specific debt, then they don't have any power to try to collect on the debt. So remember that if you don't identify yourself, which in general identifying yourself isn't what I'm too worried about with you guys. What I want you guys to do is don't admit to the debt until you get proof that that this is in fact a debt and not some sort of scam artist, because that actually opens up another can of worms. Now, in some cases, what will happen is they may make you feel guilty or scared, and sometimes they use intimidating language. And they're really not, as far as the psychological tips, so long as it's not abusive and they don't threaten you, that it's still quote unquote legal. But as far as the intimidating language, if they do threaten you with harm, remember you guys are covered under a law that is grounds for lawsuit. So some of the deal points that you guys are going to need if you guys do have to deal with a creditor or a debt collector, and one of them is going to be is you want to get it agreed to be paid or settled in full. Paid in full or settled in full. Make sure you get that as a provision, whether or not you do it for the entire amount. The next one is you're going to need them to identify the original creditor. So if this is a third-party debt collector, get them to identify the original creditor. Now, when it comes to that, in most cases, if they have already sent you a letter, then they've already done that, which is exactly what you want. Now, there's going to be an initial amount. You want to get the initial amount outlined, if applicable. And you also want to get a monthly payment written down, if applicable. Depending on how you do it, I'll actually get into more of that in the management fund part 5. And then you want to get after it's complete, after the completion of the arrangement, you want to get that reported. And congratulations, guys, with part 2, you just increase your negotiating power. So let's move on into building confidence. This is going to be part 3. These are tools that you can use. So if you guys remember what I said during the debt management overview for the basic series, there's 4 questions that you need for effective debt management. So if you guys can answer these 4 questions, you're actually in really good shape in improving your credit. So the first one is going to be, how much debt do you have? Subsequently, the next question, well, it's pretty much the same, is what is your debt service? So if you guys don't remember what I mean by debt service, just remember debt service is, once again, the minimum amount due to keep a credit account current. So if you have a credit card with $25, then your debt service for that credit card is $25. Now, the next one is, are all my debt obligations current? So is everything current on your credit report? Then the next thing is, what are my credit reports and scores? And are they accurate? The next one is, what are consumer laws, and also Fair Debt Reporting Act and Fair Credit Reporting Act. And once you have those, you have a really good framework to get started. Now, if you guys want to get your credit report, if you go to annualcreditreport.com, they'll redirect you to each one of the bureaus where you can get your free credit report, a copy of your credit report free every year. Definitely recommend you guys do that. And it's just a report that's free. The bureaus do charge for your credit score, so you do have to pay for the credit score, but you don't have to pay for the credit report. Now, a way as to sidestep that issue is if you go to, if you use CreditWise by CapitalOne.com, or if you use the Discover Scorecard, these will provide a Vantage 3.0 credit score. And there's also going to be an aggregate report. The aggregate report is going to be a collection of what you guys are going to see on most of the major ones. If you guys didn't know, each one of the credit reports don't necessarily have the same information. So it's important to get three of the major ones in order to get a good understanding of everything that's out there on your credit report. Okay, now I want to tell you guys how credit reports and scores are evaluated. So essentially, after an inquiry is made on your credit, an evaluation is done, and these are the criteria. So you have previous inquiries accounting for 10%, payment history 30%, credit usage is 35%, types of debt is 10%, length of history is 15%, and whether or not any of those criteria are exceeded or not, your income could account for this as well. So what does this mean? So this essentially means, as far as your credit report is considered, 65% of it is just payment history and credit usage. There's also going to be a component to income. So if your income's high enough and you don't meet all of the other criteria, this would also play a role. Now, the next part is going to be the low impact, and that's going to be all the hard inquiries that you have, different types of credit, and the length of your credit history. So with that, you guys now have the tools that you need in order to start your plan. So this is going to increase your leverage, i.e. negotiating power. Moving right along, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about wise counsel. So this is going to be advice. So the first kind of individual that I want to talk to you guys about is something called a credit repair specialist. So these are some of the criteria that you guys see when you're looking for a credit repair specialist. They should be able to help you out in the following ways, and that's going to be collecting all of the information about your debt, suggesting reduction or elimination plans, rebuilding your credit, drafting dispute letters, and even suggesting money management, creating a plan of attack, and monitoring and verifying all results. Now, if you guys need legal help, then what we're going to have is we're going to have a credit attorney. And credit attorneys, these are typically the guys you want to do for credit for debt harassment. So if anything in the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act was violated, this is going to be one of the individuals that you are going to consult. So once again, you're going to consult one of these guys if you really need it, and above all, know your rights. And with this, your negotiating power has now increased. Okay, moving on to part 5. Part 5 is going to be the financial component to your plan, and this is going to be managing funds. So I want to talk to you guys about something that I brought up in the money management series, and that's going to be the income allocation. So the income allocation is going to be housing accounting for 30% of your income, all other necessary expenses accounting for 30% as well, leisurely or guilt-free spending accounting for 10%, your debt service, which is the one that we're going to be concerned with, accounting for 20%, and any investing and savings, that's going to account for 10% as well. So now that we have the debt service, if you guys don't remember, debt service is the minimum amount due to keep a credit account current, and that's going to account for about 20% of your income. And with this is going to be your monthly budget, quote unquote budget, for paying off debts. So now I want to talk to you guys about negotiating capital. So negotiating capital is going to be a lump sum that you're going to allocate towards your debt, depending on what kind of debt it is. And that's going to be more or less like a down payment. And you guys can use this from reserves or or an emergency fund or something like that. So to give you guys some sort of context of the different combinations that you can, now there's an infinite number of combinations you guys can use. This is just to give you guys some sort of context. So when you have negotiating capital, you can use none and then just use your debt service. So you just make payments and there's nothing down. There's a 50-50, which is a combination of the two, where you put 50% of what you owe down and then you pay the rest on a monthly basis. And then the last one is when you just pay it off with whatever negotiating capital you have and there's no payment. Now, you guys might have the question of why have a debt service and why have negotiating capital. This is really great. Hangover from money management. This also helps reduce stress when you're negotiating, and it builds patience. Once you know how much you can put towards it, and you know how much a month you can allocate towards it, it actually makes it a lot easier, and you'll be a lot less stressed out when you're doing your negotiations. So with this one, your negotiating power has increased. Okay, moving on to part 6, devising a plan. Your plan of attack, the strategic component to negotiating. So let's just do a recap. So in part 1, you guys found out what negotiating is and what it's not. Part 2, you found out the knowledge that you need, so you know what your true power is in negotiating. You know your rights. You know the statute of limitations and all the consumer laws that protect you, and you know what deal terms you need to accomplish. So we gave you some of the tools of the trade here, and then this is to build confidence. So you guys already know your rights as a consumer of credit. You guys know what questions you need to be asking in order to effectively manage debt. You guys know what a credit report is and where to find it, and you guys also know the impacts to your credit of different components of the credit report. Moving on to part 4, these are 2 individuals that can help you with managing your debt. So you have a credit attorney for legal, and you have a credit repair specialist for your debt management plan. And then we went over the financial component, managing funds, and this is going to be your negotiating capital, i.e. the down payment that you're going to put towards whatever the debt is. And there is the debt service, which is your quote unquote monthly budget. Okay, so now that we have all those out of the way, let's talk about the strategy. So these are going to be the components to the strategy. So what you guys are going to need for the debt collector, if it's not the original creditor, to identify who they are. Then what you're going to want to do is to get them to identify who the original creditor is and what the exact amount for the debt is. Now, the next part is going to be in letters, so this is going to be the proof. So you want them to provide proof of the debt. Typically, you want to do this before you set up a payment. But in cases where you actually call the original creditor and they direct you to the debt collector, you can omit that part, but it's still really good to get some sort of paperwork on it. And then you want the deal terms, so proof of the deal terms in a collection. You definitely want something like that. You're going to arrange payment. You should opt for checks or money orders. Try to avoid ACH or cash, mainly because cash, there's no way to prove that you actually did it. And ACH, that if it opens you up to scams and there's no recourse. So at least with a check, there's some sort of recourse, even though it does have the same information on it. But when it comes to the ACH, if they decide that they want to take a different amount out, there's less recourse. So guys, protect yourself there. Now with this, you have increased your negotiating power. Okay, now we're going to go into the actual process of negotiating itself. So now that you guys have everything that you need, let's execute your strategy. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to call the original creditor. Essentially, in this step, what we ultimately want to do is we want to identify the real debt collector. We need to identify who they are. So you're gonna call the original creditor, and they're going to direct you to who the debt collector is for accuracy. Now, to ensure accuracy, you need them to verify the amount of the debt. Okay, so this is after you've identified who your debt collector is. Now that you've identified who your debt collector is, you're going to need them to verify three things. You need them to identify who they are, who the original creditor is, and what the exact amount of the debt is. So this is actually kind of you might think that it doesn't make sense because you just call the original creditor. Don't they know who they are and who they are? And the truth is, this is just best practices to make sure that you're not dealing with a scammer or a fake debt collector. So now, one of the things that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the terms. So you need them to agree to certain terms, and you need these terms outlined. So the first one is you need to get it settled in full or paid in full. Above all, you need them to agree that it's going to be in full, no matter if you guys are going to be putting it in full or not. That is very important. Always make sure that you get it settled in full. So the next one is you're going to arrange payment. So this is going to be your negotiating capital and your debt service. You're going to need the due date. And a lot of the stuff that you guys see on here, this is going to be stuff that they're going to have pretty much anyway. But it's always good to make sure that it's going to have everything that I have here. And we're going to have report completion of the deal, the remaining balance for each one, and before any payment, always get a proof of the terms, the payment information, and proof of the debt. Now, if you guys got it from the creditor, you can kind of omit this step, but still get them to send you some sort of paperwork as well. So the fourth step, this is after you've gotten all the confirmation. The deal is exactly how you outlined it, and you're ready to make a payment. So just make sure that all the information is there, the amount that you owe, the original creditor, and who the debt collector is. Verify that all the terms are correct. Once again, all the terms. And they're not doing switcheroo. Typically with debt collectors, they don't try to do that, but it's always good to make sure that you have that. The next one is going to be you typically want to have an envelope for the payment and a return envelope, and once again make the payment. So once you have everything set up, then you're going to make the payment, and you can consistently make payments until this debt is eliminated. So the fifth one is kind of a troubleshooting step. So for troubleshooting discrepancies, remember you guys can always talk to a credit attorney if you need legal advice. And if you need money management advice, there's also a credit repair specialist. And with this, your negotiating power has increased. Do you guys feel the power now? I hope you feel the power now. Okay, let's move on to the last part. And the last part is going to be monitoring your results. Observe your progress. Okay, so one of the things that you guys can do after you guys have gotten all the information, if you've already talked to all of your debt collectors, what you're gonna do is you can create a report, and this is to keep you motivated towards getting it and just analyzing what has happened. So in this report, you're gonna have some of the things that I have down here. So different types of debts, the creditor that has it, the beginning balance and the end balance. You're going to have the due date, and you're going to have the amount that you paid on it, and you're just going to list out all of the debts owed. Now, don't worry too much if you just don't understand how to set it up. What I'm going to be doing in the intermediate series is I'm actually going to be taking you guys through each one of these in detail, and I'm going to have an Excel spreadsheet to show you exactly what I do when it comes to debt collection. Okay, guys, and this last one is all mental. This is up here, and this is for you guys to stay motivated. Now, I know you guys probably felt that the debt collector before this had all the power, and you have none. I hope at the very least you guys realize that you have a lot of power, and you guys are within your rights to negotiate. I hope you guys now feel comfortable in negotiating, and if something goes wrong, you guys know exactly who to reach out to, and just know above all, you can do this. This is accomplishable. You can do this. It's greatness within you, and all that different kind of stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And that's all I have for you guys. So if you guys like this video, hit the thumbs up. In the comment, I want you guys to tell me, what did you think about, what you think or feel about negotiating before and after this tutorial? So tell me what this tutorial has done for you, if it's done anything. And if you guys want more personal finance tutorials, subscribe and receive notifications anytime I put up new ones. And I have an initial goal of 1,000 subscribers. So guys, whatever you guys can do to get 1,000 subscribers on my channel, definitely appreciate it. And with that, I'll see you on the next video. Okay, guys.